Hi everybody, welcome one and all to episode 103 of A Stitch in Time. Today is Thursday, June 6, 2019. 32 years ago, this was actually my due date for our second child, but our son ended up being born 2 days early, so we celebrated his birthday on Tuesday. I'll talk about that more later, but it's actually one of my cousin's birthdays today. So a popular date. How's everybody been? I hope you've had a good week. I've had a good mix of work and play. So I feel like I got some things accomplished, but also was able to have quite a bit of downtime to balance that out. And as a result, I actually have 2 finished projects to share with you this week, as well as a couple of new projects. First things first though, let us talk about the Shop the Stash Knit Along Crochet Along that's going on in the Ravelry group until August 31st. By stash, I mean anything acquired prior to 2019, knit or crochet, anything you like from your stash, and chat about it in the chatter thread and post FO pics in the FO thread, and I'll draw for prizes at the end of the knit along. Check out the threads there for all the details. I actually managed to get some photos taken of those prizes that I showed to you last week, but I've yet to get them posted on Ravelry, so I'll try and get those up before this goes live, but if not, they'll be coming soon. Speaking of that, I'm behind a little bit in my correspondence. I have a few messages and comments that have come in the last day or two, and if I don't manage to get back to you before this goes live, I will soon after, I promise. I don't like getting behind. I like to finish up all the sort of current podcast episodes, correspondence before I record again, but that just didn't happen this week. Yeah, so let's talk about finished projects. So one you're probably not too surprised to see because I had quite a bit done on my Crazy About Zauberball socks last week, but I finished up the foot and toe and have washed and blocked them, and now I've got a finished pair. So not a lot more to say about these. I did talk about them a fair bit while I was knitting them. The yarn is Zauberball Crazy in the colorway Herbstwind. That's 1507. That means autumn wind. And they're 64 stitch top down sock with afterthought heels. So I just drew the yarn from the other end of the ball after I had put in some waste yarn to mark where the heels were going. I never do true afterthoughts, and even when I've tried to do them completely after the sock's done, they always end up the wrong length in the foot. So what I tend to do is put in my waste yarn here, go a little bit along, then do the heel, and then it's more likely that the toes are going to occur in the right place. So I've had this yarn forever, and I am happy to finally knit it because these are definitely my colors and they will get a lot of use, I can tell. So there's FO number 1. My second finished project is the Sea Gleam Shawl by Helen Stewart. This is the first shawl in the 4th Shawl Society, and I knit it out of Fleece Artist Saldana in the Salt Spray colorway. Now, Saldana is a lace weight yarn, and the pattern called for fingering, and so I held it double to sort of make up a fingering weight. And when I showed it to you before, I told you how cushy it felt, especially the garter stitch section was just really light and puffy and cushy. And I was a little bit concerned with how it would block out. I didn't know if it would retain that sort of bulk after it was blocked out, but as it was, it didn't in a good way. It blocked out nice and flat. It's very light and airy, and I just couldn't be happier with how it turned out. So the skein, the weight on the label was 125 grams, and my skein weighed 130. And as it was, I used basically a full 125 grams. So I did have some wiggle room in the end, but if you were to plan to do it yourself, you might be, well, I guess depending on your gauge, might be cutting it kind of close. But anyway, isn't that pretty? So it starts out with this eyelet garter stitch section, moves into a stockinette garter stitch section, and then finishes with this pretty chevron-y type of border. I like with the garter bumps on the beginning of that. It kind of reminds me of waves, which, who knows, maybe that was the inspiration. But yeah, very happy with it. It's quite a generous size. I think I measured it 21 inches from top to bottom, and then it was 82, I think, from wingtip to wingtip. So it's quite generous. It can wear it very well as like a traditional shawl. Hopefully you can see that. But I think for those people who like a larger shawl to wrap in, I think it would work quite well just to wear like this too, because it's so light. Yeah, so that's a decent size. Even for me, who doesn't like light shawls, because it's such, or doesn't like large shawls like this, but because it's very lightweight, it actually feels really good. And it's been, it's sunny out today, but there's a cool breeze. We had a bunch of rain yesterday, and the weather is definitely a little cooler than it was a few days ago, so it actually doesn't feel too bad wearing it. I've got a few windows open to bring the fresh air in, but it is a little bit cooler than it has been, so I don't mind a little bit of a layer on. I'm gonna give a sip of water. So first finished project, I haven't done or the first work in progress, I should say, is Light Ease by Alicia Plummer. I've been working on this for a while, so I won't talk very extensively about it, but last week I showed you that I had finished the body and the collar, and I had started the sleeve, and I've actually done some knitting and re-knitting on the sleeve, and if I hadn't done that, I would have had more to show you. But I spent a little bit of time trying to get the right kind of color distribution going on the sleeve, and plus I am alternating the 3 skeins, a light, a medium, and a dark skein, and I am doing them in the traditional manner of just to kind of carrying my stitches up the sort of underarm seam, the beginning and end of round. I'm just going to flip this inside out. For some reason, I kind of mucked up on how I was carrying the yarns, and they weren't twisting nicely. And as you can see, hopefully, my needles are jabbing through the sweater. Probably not the best idea. You can see I'm carrying the yarns up the seam here. Yeah, they just were not lying nicely, and I don't know what I was doing. I was kind of goofing up how I was beginning a new strand of yarn at the end of round. Anyway, so I pulled it out 2 or 3 times, maybe even 4, and I'm finally kind of happy with how it's knitting up. Because the circumference of the sleeve is different than the body circumference, the yarn is knitting up a little bit different, but I think overall it looks fairly consistent with the body. So I'm glad I fiddled with it to get it that way. And yeah, now it's just a matter of kind of, what do you say, just concentrating on it and whipping out those sleeves, because I know a lot of you feel the same way, that somehow you get stuck on the sleeves and it's hard to get the motivation to finish them. I guess because you're just going round and round and round, and I'm not enjoying working with the 3 strands of yarn, so that also has been putting me off somewhat. My next projects are rather bright. One might even call them garish. So I showed you last week, I had a skein of Sweet Georgia Casual Luxe Fine in the Modern Mandarin color, and I was inspired to knit it up by the flowers in one of our flower planters. It was orange and purple flowers next to each other, and I decided I was going to knit that yarn up. So I wound it up, and originally I was just going to knit these as plain stockinette socks, but after I'd done a few rounds like that, I decided it might be a fun yarn to do a pattern with. And what came to mind was the Monkey Socks by Cookie A, and I'm sure pretty well everyone and their grandmother has knit them. This, I think, is my 3rd pair. I just thought it might be a little more interesting than just plain socks, and I also just thought the colors would be fun knit up in a pattern. So you can see I've got 4 pattern repeats done. I will do 2 for sure, maybe 3 more, and then have a matching skein, well, complementary skein in the Persimmon colorway, and I'm going to do short row heels with this color. So I actually received these 2 yarns together earlier this year. Sweet Georgia Yarns had their what do they call it, like a grab bag surprise sale. So you knew what kind of yarn you were getting, and you could choose to get, I think, 2 or 3 skeins that would coordinate, but the colors you got were a mystery. So I have to say, when I received these, I had already received in an earlier sale a skein of this Tough Love sock, or the same colorway in Tough Love sock, and that's one of the prizes I'm offering up for the shop, the Stash Cal. And to be honest, I probably would never have purchased them myself, but I really do like orange and purple together. I have several orange tops, and I have a purple sweater that I will wear over top of them. So I don't mind the color combination. And I do think they're bright and cheerful. This colorway reminds me of orange and grape popsicles. So they are bright. They're not everybody's cup of tea, I get that. But I am having fun with the bright colors. And in honor of thinking of popsicles, I have been keeping them in my ice cream cone bag that I made a couple of years ago. This is one of the first project bags I've made anyway, so I thought that was kind of fitting. So been enjoying those, and if you've ever knit Monkey, you know it's not a difficult pattern, and once you've done a few repeats, it's easily memorizable. And so again, that's something I can sit down and knit without too much thought or having to pay attention. So since the Modern Mandarin became monkeys, I still needed a pair of plain stockinette socks to work on. And so I went through my stash and I came up with this skein here. Another bright, cheerful skein. And it is 3 Irish girls, Adorn Luxe in the Electric Peacock colorway, and you can see it says Stephen B. inspired on it. This is an exclusive colorway for Stephen B's in Minneapolis, and I had bought it as souvenir yarn when I was there last summer. So I decided it was time to knit it up. Look at the gorgeous, gorgeous colors in that. And I haven't done a lot on it so far, but I do really like how it's knitting up. It has very short color segments, as you can see. Like each one's only about that long. Not sure how well that's showing up. Let's try along the bottom. So yeah, you can see the green's just a little flash. Blue, more green, turquoise, purple. And so this is how it's knitting up. So it's really fun. The colors aren't pooling. In fact, I think it looks really cool, especially on this side. It almost looks wavy, the way that this dark line divides the brighter colors. So yeah, this is definitely a fun one to knit up, and it's got lots going on, doesn't need any pattern whatsoever. So been enjoying that for sure. So I also did some quilting this week. Quite a while ago I showed you I had begun this quilt for our room. It's called, I used the double slice layer cake tutorial. I've got a link to it. It's a video tutorial. I've got a link to it in the show notes. And I used the Lilac Ridge fabric by Moda. Sorry, looking down a lot at my notes. So really pretty, kind of purple and sage green and cream fabric. So I had done half the quilt. I had the other squares chopped up and ready to be sewn together, but I hadn't done that yet. So this week I sat down and sewed them together and then attached each of them to a piece of batting. So what I'll do now is square up the blocks and then sew them together and then sew them to the first half. So it kind of becomes almost like a real patchwork look to it, which I really like. It's hard to tell that actually each block is only 4 4 pieces of fabric, because when it's sewn together you don't even know where one block starts and one block stops. It's kind of a fun way of doing it. And what I like is the pieces of fabric are large enough that you get a really good look at the different prints. Sometimes, in my experience, when you quilt, you like the fabric as a whole, but then when you actually quilt with it, sometimes those pieces end up quite small and you don't really get to fully appreciate the actual prints, where this one you really do. So I'm thinking I need to get this done. This would make a really good summer topper to have in our room. Right now we have a comforter that lots of nights we end up kind of kicking off at least partway during the night. And I think this will be a better top layer, and we'll put our other comforter away till fall again. But that means I have to get cracking and actually finish that up. I still need to choose a backing fabric for it, and I'm also going to, in order to make it larger, have strips that go around this outside of the main part, just to enlarge it so it'll cover the top of our queen size bed. So yeah, that's a goal. I'd like to get that done soon. So that's it for crafting this week. As for reading, there really hasn't been any. I've just been too tired by the time I've gone to bed at night, and I think part of it too is I need to start a new book, and I just haven't been in the right frame of mind to do that. I think once I get back into a story, it'll be more appealing to read a few pages before I turn out the light, but I just haven't had the mental capacity to wrap my head around a new set of characters and plot line. As I mentioned, this week has been a good mix of work and play. On Sunday we had our curling club's golf tournament, so I haven't played at it before. Cameron's gone at least 2, maybe 3 years. So I curled with my sister Allison and 2 of her friends, and then Cameron curled with Allison's husband and a couple other guys. And they actually put us on the same hole. So the guys teed off first and then we followed them. So it was kind of fun because we catch up to them on pretty well every hole and watch while they teed off and such. So it was a very enjoyable day. The weather was just perfect. It was sunny, kind of low 20s, nice breeze blowing. But I was surprised. I had 60 SPF sunscreen on and I still managed to get a mild sunburn. So just is a reminder of just how powerful those rays can be, even when you don't feel overheated or anything. There's not a lot of shade on that course, so when we could duck under some trees, we took advantage of that. But otherwise, we were out in the open quite a bit. As I mentioned before, it was our son's birthday on Tuesday, so he and our younger son Colin were going to go out for dinner, but they stopped by our place first for a drink. And I wasn't sure if this was like a bro dinner or if parents were welcome too, but it turned out parents were welcome too. And so we ended up joining them. And then Matt's girlfriend, she was at school, but ended up ducking out early and then joining us there after we'd been there a little while. Pardon me. So we just went to a pub that's close to where Matthew lives. And what we didn't realize, it was karaoke night. I do not do karaoke. None of us do, except Colin. Colin's actually a very good singer and musician. He plays in a couple of different bands, has written a number of his own songs and things. So I hadn't heard him sing, well over a year, I think. So he did, I think, 3 or 4 songs. So that was kind of fun to get to see him perform again. And I haven't been to karaoke for a long time either. And it seems to be people who are either really, really good or really, really not very good. So, but, just kudos to anyone who has the nerve to get up there and sing in front of all those people. I can't criticize them at all because I just don't have that nerve myself. So altogether, it was a late night, later than we'd sort of anticipated, but it was a lot of fun. Let's see. The other day I went out to our front yard and did a huge cleanup. There were a lot of shrubs that needed trimming and weeds pulled and just a whole bunch of tidy up needed. So now it looks quite good. Some of the flowers, I did bedding plants out there a little later than the backyard, and so they're starting. Some of the ones that were not blooming yet are starting to bloom, and I'm anxious to see them kind of fill out, because right now I've got a lot of zinnias out there and they're just like single stalk with one little flower on the top, but I know that they will bush out. From experience, I know that they do fill out quite a bit, so I'm anxious to see that happen. Our backyard is filling in really well. I'll put one picture here I took earlier this week. You can see I think everything but one is blooming. I bought some bee balm. I have no idea what it looks like when it actually flowers, other than the little faded picture on the tag. But it has grown a lot. It just isn't flowering yet. But everything else is. Our little rabbit friend has been around quite a bit. I am not sure if he's living under our deck or just likes to hang out there sometimes, but we sometimes see him come out from under there, or he'll duck in under there if he's startled. He or she, I don't know. Now, most of the time when I see it, it's nibbling on grass, which is just fine. But sometimes it's eating my flowers, and I caught the little rascal doing that the other day. I'll just put this little clip in because he's so cute. So once he finished eating that, I kind of shooed him out of the garden. But honestly, it's a losing proposition or losing battle. Is that the right word? Yes, a losing battle. I think that's the expression. Anyway, it's going to be there whether I want it to be or not. And honestly, most of the plants are filled out enough. I don't think he can do too much damage, but I know there's some lobelia that's really suffering for that. And one petunia plant in particular that it seems drawn to. We have continued to see the hummingbirds quite a bit. I actually managed to finally see one in the garden while I had my camera, so I got just a very brief clip of this hummingbird I'll show you here. So that's the red salvia, and that seems to be the hummingbird's favorite plant. I've also seen it at some blue salvia that we have, and I just this past week bought two kind of a raspberry color. They call it bumbleberry, and I've bought those for the further away in the backyard, and we'll see if the hummingbirds like that one as much. But definitely the red salvia, big hit. Let's see. Oh, I know something else I did this week that was really fun is I finally dragged out some stitch dictionaries and played around with designing patterns. Now, as it is, my efforts came to naught. It just wasn't working out how I'd planned, but I definitely have an increased admiration and respect for people who do this all the time, because not only do you sort of have to have the vision, you also have to do the math and see how your stitch pattern is going to work out with what you're knitting. So I definitely have some ideas, and I'm going to continue to play. In fact, I placed an order for several more stitch dictionaries that are supposed to come early to mid next week. So I'm really excited about the prospect of going through those and picking out some yarns from my stash that I want to turn into something something beautiful, hopefully. But yeah, it's been really fun just playing around. Yeah, there's obviously the possibilities are endless, and I think it's also given me a new respect for, you have to understand certain construction techniques. And it's one thing to understand, for instance, how to, knit a crescent-shaped shawl. I know I have to increase 4 stitches on the right side row and 2 stitches on the wrong side row, and that's how it grows. But there's more to it than that, and it's how will that pattern play out over, the stitch pattern play out over the body of the shawl. When do you switch into a different stitch pattern, etc., etc. So definitely fun playing around with that. So I hope that was one of my goals this year, is to publish a pattern for pay. So keep tuned. That's going to happen eventually. Determined. I'm really appreciated a number of people who commented or reached out to me about the idea of exercising and being healthy. I think a lot of us are in the same boat, that often our health takes a back seat to other things that we either have to do or like to do more. So I appreciate your encouragement for me, and I encourage you back. And it definitely served as a motivation this week to do I've done 7 days in a row, done my classical stretch workouts, and I'm feeling really good about that. And I already feel better. I knew I would. I've done these for years off and on, and I know how good they make me feel, and every day it gets easier and feels better. So I know over time it's a very good program for me. So I just feel encouraged. It's like 7 days. That's almost a quarter of the 30 days that I want to try and accomplish in a row. I also decided, when I started doing that, I started a new journal, sort of tracking what I eat and what kind of exercise I'm getting. And that's something I found really helpful in the past in order to stick to healthy habits. And I'm going to continue to do that, but I also decided to rejoin Weight Watchers. I've been on Weight Watchers off and on over the past probably 15 years, mostly off. But when I've had a real desire to drop a few pounds and do it healthily, I've been really successful at it. And I think it's just the idea, it's not just tracking what I'm eating, but knowing when I've had enough. Because I can write down everything I eat in a day, but if I don't know how much I should have, then it doesn't really accomplish the same thing. And this is just a way to keep track of, smaller portion sizes, eating more fruits and vegetables, all those things you're supposed to do. So I feel pretty encouraged going forward. I would love, my hope, my goal is by the end of the summer to be back in a few things that currently just don't fit. And I don't mean drastically. I mean, I want to drop a few inches. I don't believe in fad diets and such. I think the best way to do it is slow but sure. So I'm not setting any lofty, unreasonable goals, but I'm really hoping by the end of the summer that there's just some clothing that has become a little tighter over the last year or two will fit better. So I don't know, are you guys interested in a thread in the group where we can talk about health and all that? Usually I don't talk to many people about it, something I just usually do on my own. And I know Weight Watchers has a whole chat group and all that. That's not something I ever participate in. But if some of you felt like you could benefit from having someone else to talk to you about it, let me know and I'll open up a thread in the group where we can talk about stuff like that. So tomorrow, Cameron's taking off for 3 days. He and this sort of core group of guys every year go on a golf weekend. So he's been doing that probably, I don't know, maybe 10 years now. So I always look at it as kind of a holiday weekend for myself because I only have one person I need to be responsible for, and that's me. So I'm looking forward to kind of indulging myself with some knitting and not a whole lot of work. Although Monday, the day after he gets back, we're actually going up to the cabin till the following Saturday. And so really Sunday I'm going to have to spend kind of getting laundry done, get some groceries together and stuff. So it won't be quite as leisurely as it often is. And then Saturday night, I have 2 of my aunts have birthdays within just a few days of each other. So one's turning 80 and one's turning 65. So my other aunts, my mom is one of 10 children, and there are 8 girls in that family. So I have lots and lots of aunts on that side of the family. So the rest of the sisters are planning surprise party for them. So my sister Allison and I, since our guys are going to be away golfing, we decided to go into the party. So we're doing that Saturday evening. Other than that, I'm not really sure exactly what I'm going to be doing, but not very much in the way of work. Put it that way. On Monday, Cameron and I are taking off to the cabin for a few days, and I'm so looking forward to that. We're going to actually be on our own for at least half that amount of time, which is very rare. Normally when we go up, there are other members of our family that are there too, definitely my mom. But right now my mom is down the Oregon coast with my oldest sister, and she won't be getting back until Wednesday evening. And so we may not even see her until Thursday or Friday. I imagine once she gets home, she's going to want to get caught up on laundry and such. So maybe she'll come out to the cabin Friday. And then actually Friday night, our daughter and son-in-law and grandkids are coming up for the weekend. So they're coming up Friday night, but we're leaving Saturday just so we can have a day at home before Cameron has to go back to work next Monday. So we'll overlap with them for a little bit, but not too long. But yeah, I am just looking forward to just being close to nature, I guess, is one of the things. And there's no internet. We don't get cell service or internet out at the cabins. We do have a phone, so we're not totally cut off from the rest of the world. But yeah, no texts, no emails, no social media, and that's not a bad thing. Especially for my husband. He spends a lot of time on the phone with work, and I think he's really looking forward to being incommunicado for a few days. So yeah, I know there's going to be grass to cut, but that'll be good. I'll get some exercise doing that. But other than that, I think we'll have a fair bit of time to just relax. Definitely taking some books and lots of knitting. I've been digging through my stash and pulling out skeins that were given to me as gifts, and I'm really determined to find just the right patterns for those, because some of them have been hibernating for quite a while, and it's time to bring them out into the light and turn them into something beautiful. So hopefully by the time I return, I will have some new things to show you and maybe some finished projects. And I'm also hoping to record at least part of my next episode out there. So we'll see how that goes. I've often thought it would be a neat thing to do and just haven't really had the chance because there's always been other people around. So I'll go and find a nice spot to sit down, bring my camera, and just share a little bit of that special place with you. So because of that, I won't have an episode up next week, but I will be back with you, if all goes well, the following week. That just leaves me with something good, and my something good this week is fresh strawberries. I live in an agricultural area known for mostly berries and corn, and so we just bought our first basket of this year's strawberries the other day, and they are so good. Normally, during the year, we have to settle for California strawberries, and while they sometimes look nice and big and red, the reality is they're grown for shipping, like to last for shipping. Do you know what I mean? They're not grown necessarily for flavor, and often they are hard and not very sweet. You get the odd good batch, but in general, just there's nothing that can compare to fresh local strawberries. The flavor and the color, they just don't last as long. So you have to eat them pretty quickly once you buy them. So we've been enjoying them this week, and I'm definitely picking up some more probably tomorrow, because I really, really love them. So that's something good this week. And so if you get hold of me and you don't hear back from me right away, don't worry. It's just I may not have seen your comment or question or message, but I'll get back to you once I get back home, as you know, as soon as I can. I'll probably spend the first couple days back catching up on laundry for one and emails and stuff for another. But yeah, looking forward to just that time away. Can you tell by the big smile on my face? Yeah. Anyway, you guys have a fabulous week or two, and I will talk to you again soonish. Take care till then. Bye.